Model that we're looking to emulate is called the Patient Medical Home, and it was created by the College of Family Physicians of Canada several years ago, and it's been rolled out to many places across Canada that have chosen to implement the model.
Public housing has been chronically underfunded in this province over many decades.
The state of public housing in New Brunswick is very poor and needs addressing in ways that it hasn't been addressed for the last 30 years.
Welcome to This Week Uncut, where we take a look at the top stories of the week from CHCO-TV and The Courier. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon. We're starting this week's episode with your interview with Dr. Julie Levesque-Taylor to describe this model she's bringing to her clinic downstairs in the Wellness Center.
I think it would be no surprise to anyone in Charlotte County that there's a doctor shortage in the region. There are a lot of people in our area who are on a long wait list for a doctor. So what Dr. Julie Levesque-Taylor is doing is implementing a collaborative care model of her own to her practice in St. Andrews that's located in the Wellness Center right here at the W.C. O'Neill Arena. So basically what that means is she's added a nurse practitioner to her team as well as a registered nurse, and together they share the list of patients, and they also use digital records just to make things move more efficiently. And on top of that, they team up with other doctors. So Dr. Drost, who's in the St. George area, whenever Dr. Levesque-Taylor, for instance, might be working at the Charlotte County Hospital or is even on vacation, Dr. Drost will come in and pick up those patients that do need to see a doctor. So it allows them to bring in about another 400 patients to their list this year. And one thing that she was explaining in our interview, though, is that you can add more patients to your list, but that can often mean that it takes longer to get an appointment and doesn't always make for better care. So this is an approach she's time tested and true back in Manitoba, where she was working prior to relocating to our region 4 years ago.
Right, and it was interesting to hear her say that it's important, while it can be important to have a family doctor, it's also important to be able to access that doctor in a timely fashion, which a lot of folks in New Brunswick will have experienced is not always possible because they're handling so many patients in kind of a silo model. But we did ask for an interview with the Minister of Health because we know that they're looking at different clinics who are already kind of have the infrastructure available to them, that collaborative care model-esque style. And we did ask him whether or not they would be helping to fund this clinic because it has the electronic records, as you mentioned. It has a nurse practitioner and RN. There may be some other pieces like a social worker or something like that may need to be added to the team, but he said they were negotiating the details of how they could help fund Dr. Julie Levesque-Taylor's collaborative care model to add it to one of the 30 as part of its commitment by 2030. I did also ask him if it changed his commitment to St. Stephen and Blacks Harbour.
Yes, and that is an important background for anyone watching at home, is that Dr. Levesque-Taylor's model is actually different than what we've heard about for the last year, that the province wants to implement 30 new collaborative care clinics across New Brunswick by 2030. We know one slated for St. Stephen this year, Blacks Harbour next year, but what Dr. Levesque-Taylor is different, her clinic is actually different than those models promise.
Yes, so because she's gone ahead and done this by herself, it doesn't look exactly like the ones that they've already established, but that doesn't mean it won't look like that. And the minister kind of told me what is expected, so that they have that electronic medical record system available, that those records be digitized and available, that they take on a certain number of patients and they're capped. So basically they receive an amount of money per patient that they take on, and that they can see that patient in a timely manner, which is what she brought up in her interview. So she checks all those boxes. So so they're still negotiating the funding for that. He said it doesn't change his commitment to St. Stephen, and as you'll remember in a previous episode, we talked about MLA Kathy Baucus, who was able to kind of corner the minister a little bit and get an answer on when that collaborative care clinic, and the minister has promised that will be by the end of the year. But they've got a lot of work to do there. They need a brick and mortar location, but he said they are currently working with physicians in St. Stephen on how to do that model there. Black's Harbor is slated for 2026. So we did also talk to the New Brunswick Medical Society, who said, when we invest in clinical leaders like Levesque-Taylor, it is possible that we go beyond these 30 clinics by 2030. So they're very excited about this, and it's very interesting to see local doctors taking initiatives like these on their own to kind of help patients come off that list.
And Dr. Levesque-Taylor is receiving some funding from Family Medicine NB through the New Brunswick Medical Society and the Department of Health. But again, you're going through Dr. Dornan to see, will this become one of those promised clinics? Could there be potentially more funding opportunities or more collaboration with the province?
Yeah, absolutely. And he seemed very excited by the idea to continue negotiating that funding with their model. He said, Family Medicine New Brunswick was initiated several years ago, and it didn't see a lot of uptake originally. And that's because of he said, kind of the mindset around doctors operating in the province. They exist in silo practices, but that's not how doctors are being trained now. They're being trained to work collaboratively. So instituting collaborative models is a big mandate for the new Liberal government. But he said, they've rejigged the Family Medicine New Brunswick program. Now it's a little bit more appealing to doctors, and so he would encourage folks to get on board and do what Levesque-Taylor is doing.
I thought it was really interesting, too, in her interview when she was here in the studio. She really did want to stress to any doctors, especially watching at home, nurse practitioners, if they are interested in being a part of it, just to reach out. She would like to build something that is interwoven across Charlotte County to just ensure that we don't have these gaps in care. I know that we lost 2 doctors in the St. Stephen area this year. Many are close to that retirement age now, so it's not an issue that's going to go away. So these proactive models really do change things for really the immediate future. We're looking at St. Andrews. She said she's taking E5B, that area code. So if you are looking for a family doctor in this area, it really is the right time right now to get yourself on that waiting list, because Dr. Levesque-Taylor said she will be making these phone calls very soon to add 400 patients from right here onto her patient list. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, she encouraged folks to be patient. It will take some time.
No pun intended.
Yes. It will take some time to get those folks kind of set up and on board. But she said if you're waiting for that call, be by your phone, because it could come. And there are 18,000 patients in Zone 2, which is the southwestern part of New Brunswick, that are waiting for a primary care provider.
And I think everyone from COVID-19 times is very well familiar with the map and what Zone 2 is now. So we were definitely given that tutorial during COVID. So 18,000 for this region alone is quite substantial.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think there's roughly 60,000 across the province. So it's, that list is not unsubstantial. So it'll be interesting to see if we can sort of how that list kind of lessens over time with these new collaborative care clinics.
And I think too, Charlotte County, when we look at our geography, I mean, there's so much to cover, so many islands as well. So she definitely is looking for those doctors, for those healthcare workers to reach out and potentially join what she's doing and be proactive about it. But here is a look at part of our interview with Dr. Julie Levesque-Taylor from Coastal Communities Health Homes.
So since we've been here, it's been 4 years. So we started, and most people probably wouldn't have even noticed the changes in the beginning. So we started with an electronic medical record. So maybe I'll back up a step. The model that we're looking to emulate is called the patient medical home, and it was created by the College of Family Physicians of Canada several years ago, and it's been rolled out to many places across Canada that have chosen to implement the model, including my old clinic in Winnipeg. We were actually the first patient medical home. Like, they do this little newsletter where they announce the successes, and so we were pretty proud of what we had accomplished out in Winnipeg. So I knew how to build this thing. I've lived it. I've evolved it over 20 years in Winnipeg. Why wouldn't I try to bring that here and to create that success here? So that's the model. So if I walk you through the model a little bit, if you want to Google it, it's on the Horizon Health website. You can look it up on the Canadian Family Physician website as well. So it's like a house. The foundation of the house is the infrastructure, right? So the administrative supports and the infrastructure that you need to support the team that's going to take care of the patients. So that infrastructure starts with a building. So I was hugely fortunate to have the support that we've received from the town of St. Andrews and from the philanthropists, the Dunn Foundation and others that have paid for the wellness center here in St. Andrews is really the building block to what I've built on. Without that, we would not be nearly as far ahead as we are right now in our planning.
Yes, we should say for anyone watching at home, the town of St. Andrews was proactive long before what the province is doing now. I know it's a new government, but the province or the town was doing this even before the new government's plan was to give space for a wellness center in this very building. And that idea was to recruit doctors, and then along came Dr. Julie and changed many people's lives in this part of the world. So you're saying this building is the infrastructure, the building block from where you build everything else. But again, yes, the town deserves a great shout out for that.
Absolutely, they do. So that's the beginning, and then of course there's the funding that helps, you know, build the team, build the clinical, the computers, the blood pressure cuffs, all the things that you need to practice medicine to be able to, so it doesn't all have to come out of the doctor's pocket. I mean, certainly I did spend some of my own money doing this, but if there's access to that kind of funding, so we got that funding from the New Brunswick Medical Society and Health, have built something called Family Medicine New Brunswick, and the goal is to encourage physicians like myself to build primary care teams. So that foundation bit is, you know, having the building to work with, having the underlying infrastructure, things like, you know, an electronic medical record to be able to communicate between staff members, hiring the staff that you need to be able to make you more efficient. My husband Ray Taylor has an MBA, so we're putting that to good work. So he's the practice manager. He's done all the heavy lifting on getting us up and running with our new electronic medical record, getting things like e-fax put in place, so we're not using paper anymore. And yes, we're still getting paper from the hospitals, but we're working on that. But being able to scan things in, so I'm not touching huge stacks of paper that I can't bring home on a Saturday night. I can do it all on the computer. On a snow day, we can, you know, if no one can get into the clinic because there's 2 feet of snow, we run the office. We have VoIP phones that the town has purchased for us, which means that we can answer the phones from our home if we have to. So, and I can do, you know, virtual visits in person on the phone or on video through the new record. So all of those things make us more nimble to be able to. We don't have to cancel clinic on a snow day. We don't have to cancel clinic if I've got a child that's vomiting and I have to stay home and take care of her. She can be in her own bedroom sleeping, and I can still make phone calls and still kind of do my work. So this is all of the infrastructure of the base of the whole plan. So Family Medicine New Brunswick also provides funding to encourage family doctors to add more team members. What do I mean by that? So we've chosen to start with primary care nursing and a nurse practitioner. And so, and how do you find these wonderful professionals? Well, you teach, and word of mouth always helps. So Morgan Stevens was the first person that we have offered a job to using that funding. So she is a nurse practitioner graduate. So she worked with me in the clinic for her practicum and her clinical hours over the last year. We clicked. I thought she'd be a great fit for the community. She's from St. George. So she's a local person. She's a 7-year ER nurse, so she's got lots of great experience under her belt. She's a good human. She's fun to work with, lots of empathy. She's all the things that you would want. So we're anxiously awaiting the results of her exam. I have no doubts she's going to pass. She's a bright young woman. So as soon as that's all said and done, you will have recognized, people who are in my practice will have seen her in clinic already as a student, but we're really excited to see her take on a practice and work in the clinic. What does that mean? It means that when I'm pulled away to the hospital, which will be more often now that our call group keeps shrinking, because that's not an option. All physicians that work in Charlotte County must work in the call schedule as hospitalists at Charlotte County Hospital. So the fewer docs we have, the more often we need to be there. So when I first got here, we were 1 in 8 weeks on call. We're now 1 in 5 to 6 weeks on call. So you got to think 20 to 25% of the time I'm away.
So,
that is a lot of time to be away.
Yeah, that's a part of the formula that I honestly haven't even thought about to make the problem of doctor shortages even more complicated, is that when we lose doctors, then that also increases your shifts at the hospital.
Exactly. So if I'm away at the hospital and I'm taking care of the sickest of sick people, I can't be in two places at once, although I try, they call, we try to do things over the phone as best we can. It becomes, you're trying to manage two places at once, and it's stressful. And it's difficult because there aren't enough hours in the day. So having Morgan as a nurse practitioner in the office when she's able to start prescribing and doing all the things that she'll be able to do when she gets her license up and running, is that she's going to be able to field most of that stuff. So she'll be working 3 days a week and building her own practice. But on the weeks that I'm at the hospital, she's agreed to come 5 days a week during those weeks. So the vast majority of the things that could possibly come in through the clinic that are urgent, that need to be seen, would be able to be managed by Morgan. And if something comes in that is beyond her scope of practice, then Dr. Drost in St. George is my family medicine New Brunswick buddy doc. So Coastal Communities Health Home, as you mentioned at the beginning, is the name of our family medicine New Brunswick Family Medicine Brunswick Health Home team. And so what that means is we chose that name really carefully because the idea here is we're just getting started. My husband would say, no, she's going for a pivot. And so it's not, to me, not enough to create this wonderful thing in St. Andrews that we're building here and creating more access and more space for people to make sure that everybody gets a family doctor. It's being able to take that model and offer it to new graduates, new doctors that come to some of these other communities. So when Horizon Health decides to build something in St. Stephen, and we're trying to, while we're teaching and bringing in residents and showing them what a wonderful place Charlotte County is to practice, it's being able to say, don't worry, young doc, I got your back. I figured this out already. Here are all my workflows. Here are all the things that you need to buy. Here's the ABCs of how you're going to start that practice and build it the way I built mine. And you don't have to figure that out on your own in your first years of practice.
Kind of a wonderful, it creates almost a succession plan in a community that often fears losing. I know that there was a certain point in time recently where a huge chunk of our doctors were nearing retirement age, at a very large number.
Yep.
And that makes you start to wonder, how do these new doctors get into the community? So this must offer another way to mentor people who might love this part of the world and want to come back, or like you and want to start a life here.
Exactly.
It gives you a chance to keep them and have them trained for that next generation.
Exactly. So what we built here, so Coastal Communities Health Home St. Andrews, that's me. Coastal Communities Health Home St. George, that's Dr. Cherise Drost. And then eventually, maybe St. Stephen, maybe Blacks Harbor, maybe Grand Manan, maybe whatever. The sky's the limit. If you have physicians that come that like what we've done, and we get support, hopefully, from Horizon Health to be able to get some of these things off the ground in other communities. I mean, you need a physician leader wherever you go. I'm the leader for St. Andrews. I'm, helping Cherise get off her feet and be able to, because she's brand new in practice. She's been there for 2 years now, I believe. So we're mentoring her along so that she can create what we've created over time. And then eventually, the first thing I did when I got here is I looked around and I'm like, where are all the students? There's no students in the hospitals. There's no medical students, nurse practitioner students, family medicine residency students. How do you attract succession if they never get to see how wonderful this place is?
That was Dr. Julie Levesque-Taylor from Coastal Communities Health Homes, based right here in St. Andrews. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more of This Week Uncut.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth.
We were finally able to get a glimpse at the Stein Lake After Action Report.
I know that this is something, well, actually, you were working at Global at the time of the Stein Lake fire. That's where we spent a lot of time together and really got to know you. And I know it's something that you've continued to follow since this fire 2 years ago. What are you learning, though, about the reports after the fact?
Yeah, so we did an investigation last winter about one of the things that really struck me during that wildfire, which is that there was no alert ready issued during the wildfire. It struck me as a very obvious misuse of the emergency alerting system. So they use that system in the event of a natural disaster. People will often notice that they're used for missing children as well, more commonly known as an Amber Alert. But it wasn't used. And I remember when we were in a press conference, we asked the public safety minister at the time why it wasn't issued. He said it didn't meet the criteria. So we as I came to work here, I decided I had a little bit more time to kind of look at that. And so we did a right to information request, and that revealed that they felt like they didn't have enough information to issue the alert. So to suggest to people to go west if the fire was coming from the west or something of that nature. But there's no criteria essentially that Alert Ready provides. It's just like a common uses. So it wasn't exactly that it didn't meet the criteria. So we continued to investigate that, but what was glaringly obvious was that there seemed to be a bit of communication issues. Did you notice that when you were covering it? I mean, you guys were on scene first. Global actually used a lot of your fire footage from that day.
It was what it is in a small community at the time, right? Our local fire department was going door to door to make sure people were evacuating at the time. And I think they were doing what they had to do, was just respond instantly to figure out that everyone was coming. They made the W.C. O'Neill arena the safe haven for anyone that was being evacuated at the time. But definitely when you're in the thick of covering something like that, those questions are going off in your head, and you don't always have the time to investigate until after the fact, which is why I think that your two-part series that you did this winter, Silent Blaze, which anyone that is interested in reading more, it's a long series that you did, a really deep investigative dive into why these alert readies weren't issued. But it's something you're continuing to follow now. Do you find that any of the research that you did, any of the work that you were able to uncover has had any positive outcome?
I mean, I wasn't surprised by what was contained in the report. The report called communication both between departments and different agencies and the public challenging, and that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I remember the media was standing outside the fire department for not 1 hour, but several hours waiting for someone from either the provincial government or the local government to come out and tell us what was going on. And it was, it was very tense because we were all waiting to kind of see what was happening. We didn't know if anyone had been injured at the time. But the report speaks to a lack of communication between the agencies, right? There was never a state of emergency declared, and they wanted the local government and other agencies to be re-educated on how to ask for a state of emergency declaration or a local state of emergency declaration. They talked about how Horizon Health was never notified actually that the wildfire was happening. They found out through social media from a local official. I don't know who that local official is, but they might know who they are. And Mayor Brad Henderson, or former Mayor Brad Henderson, did tell us on a number of occasions through interviews that he was never asked about an alert ready. He was never asked to communicate that. And they were doing so through social media in the best way that they knew how. The government was also communicating through X. Now, I don't need to tell you that not everybody is on social media, especially in rural New Brunswick. So that communication issue rang through the report. There were 12 recommendations in total. All of those have been completed. They were listed at varying levels of priority, but the consistent theme was that the communication was unreliable and challenging, or unreliable or kind of not clear. Even with the Canadian Red Cross, there was issues on whether people knew to go to the W.C. O'Neill Arena or how to register with the Canadian Red Cross. So it was definitely interesting. There's only one recommendation left, and that is for the Office of the Fire Marshal, which is slated to be completed in July of 2025, which is to formalize the Structure Protection Units program with the Department of Natural Resources and Energy Development. So they have made progress, and they've learned a tremendous amount from what happened in Beau-Quebec. And it is worth noting that wildfires are not something that, of this size, were not something that New Brunswick has generally dealt with, right? It was more than the 10-year average when it burned. We're really used to hurricanes, we're really used to massive snowstorms and ice storms, we're not used to wildfires. So there's other programs that are now going to be available. Fire Smart, we've discussed that. And I did kind of talk to Fire Chief Kevin Theriault, and he's hopeful that they'll get one of those contingency plans that are available to the municipalities. So progress has been made, and it was good to see them be honest about the communication and how challenging it was during the wildfire.
Yeah, definitely something that stays with you for a long time. I know I'm still very grateful to our local fire departments. So many volunteer firefighters that really were the heroes of the Stein Lake fire and everything that we went to. There was only one home that was lost and no injuries, no deaths from that fire. So I really think it speaks to the people on the ground that are from here too. What an excellent job they did, despite some of the things that we look back on now and see where the holes were in the communication.
Yeah, and I want to stress that the decision to evacuate was made locally. That was not made by anyone in an office in Fredericton. It was made by the fire chief and the local people here who understand the landscape and understand where people might have been, and they went door to door to do that evacuation.
It definitely still sits with us very deeply here. This was the site where evacuated people came during that fire. So it was really, I mean, you were just so right beside all of these heroes that were making these decisions to keep people safe. And we were seeing those people who were affected by that fire and wondering if their homes were going to be safe, if their pets were going to be safe in some cases. But nevertheless, we have a lot of local heroes to be very grateful for.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with This Week Uncut.
$2 million in operational maintenance funding every year since they've been built has not kept up.
It's pretty tough to lock in a financial commitment that's guaranteed for that kind of time frame.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon. We had Aidan Rayner this week working on several stories for The Courier. It included some stories about library workers and those cuts that were happening to now Anglophone West and South. So he also worked on a story about the Auditor General's report, and people will be familiar with the Auditor General. It's an accountability office. And this one dealt with public housing units and MB Power, but Aidan focused mainly on the public housing units. So Aidan, when you saw that report, what struck you as important, and what did you learn from that report?
The province I learned a lot from this report, and we all got to see a glimpse of how poorly managed the New Brunswick Housing Corporation is operating their public housing units. It's no surprise to people who work in advocacy for tenants, but this report found that 85% of annual interior inspections were not made. 71% of repairs requiring completion within 24 hours were not done within 24 hours, and those are emergency repairs that need to be done in a timely manner. And it also said that public housing units were sitting vacant for an average of 140 days rather than the 30-day limit that the province sets for itself. So that's 110 days that these units are sitting vacant. And when we have so many people waiting for this, the province actually got back to me with a number. When the report was done, it cited 13,129 households waiting for public housing, and that represents 21,712 individuals. So that's over 21,000 people waiting on the wait list for this housing. And this report showed that even when you get on the wait list for this highly coveted public housing, it's not living up to the way it should.
What did you learn about those units specifically? You mentioned some of the things, the maintenance is not being kept up. What did you learn about the units that are waiting for maintenance, or what did you learn about those specific units?
So those units are basically sitting vacant because there aren't enough inspectors. There aren't enough people with enough power to go around to each of those and perform the maintenance that is required to be done to get new tenants in. And that is what's really causing the delay.
Okay, what is it that what goes into what the auditor chooses to investigate? Why was it housing that he took this deep dive into?
So I was able to get on the phone with him the day that the report came out, and he said that they chose housing because of the housing crisis right now that New Brunswick and Canada is facing. And he found this report. The exact words he used to me were, "This stuff pulls at your heartstrings," which is quite a quote to get from the Auditor General. And he cited the biggest point to him that he noticed that tugged on his heartstrings was a seniors public housing complex right near Edmundston that burnt down in 2023. And in the report, it also outlines that the fire marshal was not able to find a concrete conclusion to what caused the fire, but they hypothesized that it was electrical in nature. And Paul Martin directly said, it's unclear if this was caused by electrical fire, but if an annual report or an annual inspection was done, this would have been caught.
Okay.
This is the type of stuff that we're dealing with, and that's the checking on electrical boxes and stuff like that is included in those interior inspections. Those are very serious, and 85% of those are not being done.
Wow. So who else were you able to speak with on this topic?
Yeah, so I spoke with the housing advocate, Tobin LeBlanc Haley. She works with the New Brunswick Coalition for Tenants' Rights, and she told me this is nothing new. She's been dealing with this stuff forever. People have been calling, tenants have been calling her and the organization that she represents with the exact same issues that were outlined in the report. So this is no surprise to her. She said that it is nice to see that the government is willing. This is a government that's more willing to tackle this issue than previous, but it's not going far enough. She said that there's no amount of, she's not seeing the amount necessary that the public needs to invest in public housing to get to where we need to go to solve these issues.
Okay.
And she described it as two levels of rights for tenants, public housing tenants and private tenants, and which is how this province sort of operates. And it sort of seems like the public housing sector is kind of being left to kind of waste, and that's unfortunate. But you were able to talk to the government as well, Minister David Hickey and the Premier. What did Minister Hickey have to say?
So he said on the same day of the report, the media was asking a lot of questions, so he had a media availability, and he outlined that the province is going to make dramatic changes. More information will come out semi-soon about what changes will be made after the Auditor General's report, but he's saying the province is going to make dramatic changes on top of the dramatic changes that they've already gone through since being elected. I had to follow up with the province just to get exact numbers on what they're doing right now to solve this issue, and they said they're hiring 6 additional inspectors, 3 additional repair workers, and 1 maintenance supervisor to fill those roles and get those inspections done quicker to get more people into public housing to reduce that wait list.
And there was a little decrease, a slight decrease though, going into this year from the wait list last year.
A slight. I needed to confirm with the province on the number of households waiting right now, and that is 12,305 versus the 13,129 that was on the list at the 31st of December when the data from the Auditor General was working on finished. And yeah, he said that there needs to be dramatic changes, but I specifically asked him, how can we permanently solve this issue? These issues come from a lack of maintenance funding, and to secure this permanently, we'll need to have some major reinvestment. He didn't say too much how we're going to secure it permanently. He kind of danced around a little bit.
Here is a look at Aidan Rayner's interview with Housing Minister David Hickey.
We've not built public housing in this province for 30 plus years, and we've done a really poor job of maintaining it during those years. We've got about 5,000 units across the province, and what we're seeing is that $2 million in operational maintenance funding every year since they've been built has not kept up. And it's meant that the province of New Brunswick has let the degradation of public housing happen over that time, and it's created the situation that we're in, and it is entirely unacceptable that we are in this situation. And that's why we are spending more than we ever have on the maintenance of public housing. That's why we pushed hard to make sure that we got the budget increases that we did, which is we saw an 18.6% increase in the Housing New Brunswick budget. And that's really why we've positioned ourselves the way we are. What this report is saying and what are the recommendations that that Housing New Brunswick has responded with is exactly what we've been saying for many years, is that we are suffering from a housing crisis, not only in the supply of housing, but in the maintenance and care for the housing that we do have.
Thanks, Bobby Jean. Global, Anna Mandan.
So you've touched on this a bit, but can you talk about how we got to this point and what level of urgency you're working with getting out of this point?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're working with the same level of urgency we are in treating this crisis, which is it is a main priority of this government to ensure that we solve the housing crisis in this province, that we deal with the massive problem that is the maintenance of our public housing. And we've gotten here because we've had successive governments not prioritize housing. And we've had successive governments that have not built public housing at the rate it needs to be built and have poorly maintained the public housing we do have. As it stands, of our 5,000 public housing units, there's a 12,000 person wait list for those public housing units. So you can imagine that when a report comes out like this, outlining very clearly the state of public housing, and yet there are people living in housing insecurity to a point where they hope to get into public housing, right? I live in a neighborhood where getting into public housing is treated like winning the lottery. And yet what this report very clearly says is that even getting into public housing means continuing to live in substandard and sometimes unsafe housing conditions.
Follow, Anna?
This report has laid out a number of recommendations. What's your biggest priority when approaching this?
I think the biggest priority, Hannah, is laying out that pathway to repair, laying out that pathway to look after the public housing we have and develop very realistic and clear maintenance goals and repair goals for that public housing. And it presents a difficult challenge for us because government has not done this and has not done this well over the past many governments and few decades. Because what this report clearly shows is that we've not done that. And this is a big shift for government. It means seeing massive increases, which our budget has laid out that, significant increases in the repair and maintenance of public housing, and continuing that, making sure that this is not a one-off, but that investment in the housing stock that we do own continues to be a priority, and making sure that we're looking at every opportunity to get as many financing options on the table, whether that's looking at the equity in our public housing to reinvest in the repair of that public housing. We're making sure that all of those considerations are on the table so that we can make sure that these repairs get done as quickly as possible and we come up with the right maintenance and repair schedules that are realistic for the public housing that we do have.
Hi, Minister Hickey. How many additional maintenance workers are you hoping to hire within this fiscal year?
I'll lean on Adam for that specific answer. I know we do have it, Barb, but it is an increase over last year, and my intention is to see that over budgets to come. But we can get that number for you.
Thank you. And I guess part of that is, in speaking with the union, one of the things they identified is that there are maintenance workers that probably could not just be doing minor repairs. They could be upgraded, trained to be able to do plumbing and electrical and deal with some of the backlog. is this something, I guess, as minister, you're looking at in terms of maybe providing funding to train some of these people up to a different skill level?
Yeah, absolutely it is. It's also making sure that that there's regional reflection in that is really important too. So we want to lean on our team to make sure that they are supported to the best that they can be. And if that means investing in their education so that we don't need to hire a plumber in Edmundston or hire an electrician in St. Stephen, then we're keen to make sure that that can happen.
And then could I get a breakdown of how much is projected for maintenance for this year, for the 25-26 fiscal year? Is there a number?
Yes, there is. And Adam will have the specifics that we can issue to you guys.
Yeah, if you can follow up with me, Barb.
Okay.
Okay. CTV, Nick Moore.
I have a rough number in my head, Barb, but I'll make sure that Adam gives you the specifics.
Hi there. Do you have a message for some of the individuals who've had to, we have 53 cases identified in the report that had to wait a year to 3 years in order to get any kind of resolution to pest and bedbug complaints, for example. Do you have any message for them?
Yeah, Nick, I think the message is pretty straightforward for me. We will do better. We will do better. We need to do better because it's treated for so many. Getting into public housing is the opportunity that folks need to do more and to offer them that safety and security of having a reliable and affordable place to call home, so that they can have that base and that they can have that foundation in their lives. And to know that for many, many years, New Brunswick has not been offering that to our own tenants, I think is really telling as to the crisis that we're in. So the message to our tenants is we will do better. We have been calling on governments of the past. I've been calling on governments of the past to do better. And now that I am in this position, we will take every opportunity we can to do better. And that's why I think it's reflected in our budgets and in our increase in maintenance and support for our units.
And a quick follow to Bobby Jean's question from earlier, just about the urgency in dealing with some of these issues, primarily the safety concerns. I mean, you can make an argument that they should have been dealt with yesterday, but how much longer, for example, if somebody's dealing with a fire code issue, like how much longer are they going to have to wait? Are we talking a matter of days now that this is all out in the open, or weeks, months? Like, what's the timeline that they can expect?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not. I'll say it's not going to change because this report is out, because we've already been doing this work, right? The alarm bell has already been sounding in our department around maintenance, and that has been clear from day one. And what my team has been begging for, and what our maintenance staff has been begging for on the ground, is support and more help to be able to do the job that they have been asked to do, because right now the demand is too much on them. Right now they know that when they go to work, they're not going to be able to meet the need that is expected from them, and that is not fair for us to be putting them in that situation. And we continue to do it every day until we see that investment actually takes place. So with the additions that we've seen in the budget this year, that stuff has already started to roll out. There are specific commitments within our response to the AG's report, but the importance that I take away from this is that this report has justified what we've been saying all along, is that the chronic underfunding of public housing and public housing maintenance in particular has led to this crisis that we're in, whether it be a maintenance crisis or a safety crisis in many cases. We need to do a lot better. And that's exactly what I've been tasked to do. And we'll continue to do that work with a lot of urgency. And because we know that, and I know that it's my job to not only support our tenants, but to support the people who do the work on the ground for our organization every day.
Thanks, Nick. Aidan Rayner, The Courier.
Thank you, Adam. How will the New Brunswick Housing Corporation permanently secure the funds required to make these improvements and cover the operational costs so that tenants aren't worried about every 4 years we're going to have a secure place to live and no bed bugs? Does that include taxing corporate landlords at a higher rate to finance the improvements and operational costs that need to be made to our affordable housing system in the province?
Sure. It's a good question, Aidan. I think, you know, I can say that as long as I'm in this job, I will continue to advocate for the appropriate levels of maintenance support for our team, and continue to do that. I'm proud of the 18+% increase in our budget this year, and want to continue to push for that year over year to ensure that we are addressing the massive gap that has been created over a few decades in public housing in this province. So it's about making sure that can keep up. I think is really important, and to make sure that we set the tone to say, look, when we are issuing the appropriate funding, when we are issuing the appropriate operational and maintenance support to folks on the ground, we can meet the need of our public housing units.
Aidan?
And how will the Housing Corporation hold itself accountable to these recommendations, and how will the public be able to see the corporation making its improvements? Will this mean regularly quarterly reports, or how is that going to work?
Well, look, I mean, we obviously rely on the Attorney General for the Auditor General to issue reports like this, which are really important. And they really, you know, in this case, really back up a lot of what we've been saying for a long time, support of a lot of what we've been saying since I took on this job. So we'll rely on those reports. But I also just come back to the KPIs that the Premier's issued to me, specifically to the number of public housing units we're adding to the market. Our ambition and our plan is to make sure that as we add, we exponentially grow the number of maintenance support, so that we can make sure that not only are we able to maintain the new units that we add to the market, but we're growing faster to be able to maintain the actual units that we do have that aren't being maintained properly right now.
That was the minister responsible for New Brunswick's Housing Corporation, David Hickey. I did also get the chance to ask Premier Holt the same question. Here's her response.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, because certainly the Auditor General made quite visible what many people knew to be true, which is that the state of public housing in New Brunswick is very poor and needs addressing in ways that it hasn't been addressed for the last 30 years. So in terms of securing permanent funding, it's maybe the sad reality of politics is it's pretty difficult to put something in place that's going to last for 10 years when election cycles may change the leadership and thus the budgetary decisions, and it's pretty tough to lock in a financial commitment that's guaranteed for that kind of time frame. We are negotiating constantly with the federal government in order to support our housing projects and initiatives, because the construction of new public housing is something we also need to do, and the federal government is keen to partner on that front, as well as to support making sure that New Brunswickers have safe, quality, affordable places to call home. So I know that Minister Hickey has been an excellent advocate on this file and has already started advocating for more funds in next year's budget, and to see those funds continue to reach the level necessary in order for us to maintain this housing in a way that any of us would be happy to live in and can live comfortably and in a dignified way with our families. So there's lots of work to do to try to get the funds and budgets up to a place where they can cover the maintenance required for our public housing.
That was Premier Susan Holt discussing the New Brunswick Housing Corporation with the Courier's Aidan Rayner in a press conference. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with This Week Uncut.
We have been looking at affordable housing in large part because we've had trouble attracting and retaining staff, and this started in basically with COVID.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth.
We have a lot on the agenda, but I say that every week. I have to come up with a new line.
It's true every week. It is true every week. That is
Yes.
the funny part. I say that too. I feel like a broken record saying an exciting week, but we always have an exciting week around here. This week, though, you and I are both going to be in Sackville, kicking off the week at a local News Matters conference. So it'll be exciting to be with some of our colleagues from other news outlets to see how they're managing to survive and thrive in the media in New Brunswick, which really is a news desert.
I really don't think the public understands how exciting it is to get into a room full of journalists who are all doing the same thing that we do. It's nice to commiserate with folks who are maybe struggling a little bit like we are. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think whenever as a journalist you're based in a big city, you're around other news outlets all the time. When we're based where we are, when we're both CHCO and The Courier under one roof, we tend to not get to see a lot of other media and just have these conversations with each other about how we're navigating the changing landscape, also different news stories, big global issues and things like that from a regional perspective. So it's always great to have that time to hear how other people are managing in an era of meta news block in Canada and things like that as well.
Yes, it's great to be with like-minded people and who are helping local news not only survive but thrive in a way that is meaningful to their communities.
I'm very excited to get to speak on a panel too. A lot of what we'll be speaking about is in part thanks to you as well. We're talking a lot about bringing the Courier back to life and things we've managed to do here in Charlotte County, and a huge part of that goes out to our viewers, to our public, who whether they're supporting us by just sharing some of our content or playing TV bingo on Tuesdays. It really is a community effort that keeps not only the TV station here, but now our free newspaper afloat. And we really do appreciate the community for how they truly make this a community television station and media outlet.
Yeah, the Courier will have some more stories next week about the affordable housing project that the Passamaquoddy Lodge is endeavoring to do for its staff and some seniors. We were able to talk to Sue Lister, who donated the land to the Passamaquoddy Foundation. So I'm working on that story. We've got council coming up, so as always, we will have content from council. Aidan is also working on several stories, one pertaining to Blacks Harbour. You'll be familiar that the water supply is currently a hot issue in Blacks Harbour, so he's working on a story about that. So we have lots coming up in the Courier for the next week.
Oh, and how beautiful to hear that. It's Sue and Vern Lister donating land for this project, and I know that they try to do these things quietly. They're some of the greatest community members that we have in Charlotte County, but I think we were both at council when we heard that news too, and it is pretty special when you look at small communities like ours, how it is community members stepping up to the plate to help solve a lot of the problems we have. We don't always wait for, the answers to come from outside. The community steps up oftentimes, and Sue and Vern Lister are great examples of that.
I actually stayed at the picket fence while I covered the wildfire, and Sue was someone who gave me the lay of the land here. She was so helpful and so accommodating. We actually ended up having to extend our stay, I think, 2 times from the original stay date, so she was very accommodating, and it was so wonderful to meet her, and she's a shining example of what Charlotte County hospitality actually is. So yes. I was very glad to meet her.
I will be having Sergeant Scott McKenzie in next week. He is retiring from the RCMP, so we're going to do a retrospective on his career, talk about his time, especially serving right here in Southwest New Brunswick. So he'll be in for half an hour. We've also been doing regular sit-downs with RCMP officers just to get ideas about what current crimes to look out for. Also, online scams is a big thing as well. So I think anyone that's watching Southwest Magazine regularly these days often does get to see our shows with the local RCMP. But this one will be a special episode with Scott McKenzie to just look back at his career and his time here. So I'm excited to sit down with him. Often bittersweet when you don't see people in their roles that you're so used to seeing them in the community again. But I'm happy to have him here to just say thank you for your service and to hear about his time.
Absolutely. We wish him well in his retirement. Thanks for watching This Week Uncut. We'll see you next week. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth.